Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Carnegie China event, Ceasefire and Strategy, Thailand, Cambodia, and Great Power Competition in Southeast Asia. I'm Alina Noor, Senior Fellow, Asia Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and I'm honored to open and moderate our discussion today. Last week, on the sidelines of the 47th ASEAN Summit, the Kingdom of Cambodia and the Kingdom of Thailand, respectively led by Prime Minister Hun Manet and Prime Minister Anutin Chanvirakul, signed the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accord. That ceremony was witnessed by US President Donald Trump and Malaysian Prime Minister and this year's ASEAN Chair Anwar Ibrahim. The KL Peace Accord outlines 4 conditions for the cessation of hostilities between Cambodia and Thailand: withdrawal of heavy weaponry under the observation and verification of an ASEAN observer team, refrain from dissemination or promotion of misinformation or disinformation, full and immediate implementation of confidence-building measures between both parties, and demining in the border areas between Cambodia and Thailand. This KL agreement follows an earlier ceasefire reached between the two parties in July 2025, in which both the United States and China seemed to have a significant role, working together with the Malaysian chair of ASEAN. But what made the KL Peace Accord significant, I would argue, was the very prominent presence of President Trump. In fact, the backdrop for the signing ceremony looked like the event may well have been in Washington at the White House. And the equally conspicuous absence of President Xi Jinping. To unpack the bilateral, regional, and great power implications of the KL Peace Accord and the way forward for both Cambodia and Thailand, I'm so pleased to have with me Pongphisoot Busbarat, Carnegie China non-resident scholar and director of the Institute of Security and International Studies Thailand, and Cheng Paul On, Fellowship Program Manager, Future Forum. Paul recently published a commentary with us exploring China's evolving role as a security actor in Southeast Asia, and specifically in talks between both Cambodia and Thailand. Paul, President Trump, when he was recently asked, dismissed China's role in arbitrating peace between Cambodia and Thailand. President Xi pushed back and said that China had been helping in its own way. So Paul, let me pass the mic to you to start us off. And let me ask for your perspectives on where we are right now with the peace accord and whether your assessment of China's role has changed at all since you wrote the paper.
Okay, thank you very much, Alina, for having me here and with Cheng Po to discuss about this issue. It's very a key important issue between Thailand and Cambodia. But as you mentioned, I wrote a commentary on China's role in this series of peace negotiations and deals, right? But first of all, let me just recap a little bit and see how that particular arguments that put forward in that piece of commentary is still valid or not, right? I mean, like my key argument in that paper was that the July border flare-up, became a litmus test for China ambitions to act as a regional peacemaker or security role in the regions. In a nutshell, my argument is that Beijing was active and visible, right? We can still see that role, but still US leadership and coercive diplomacy ultimately shaped the ceasefire and, at the end, the peace deal. So revealing both China leverage and its limit in the crisis management in the region. So China active mediation role manifested in a number of attempts, as we can observe since the beginning, to act as a good office, convincing both parties to come at the table and de-escalate the tension. You probably could see from the beginning, China has been adamant in asserting this role. Early July, during the ASEAN Foreign Ministerial meeting, Wang Yi also met with both leaders during the visit of the ASEAN Secretary General to Beijing in late July. China also bring up this issue with the Secretary General as well and endorse the ASEAN role in that conflict management. At the UNSC closed door meeting on the 25th of July, China also urged de-escalations and regional solution to keep ASEAN as a center stage for this peace process. So after ceasefire agreement was signed, in KL on 28th July. China continues to support, right? I mean, like the talk was held again on the 30th July in Shanghai. So China also convened like trilateral meeting between China, Thailand, and Cambodia, senior diplomat during that time. So you can see, we see the positive gestures by Beijing in asserting its role as a strong supporter for these de-escalations and peace makers. However, some observations that I put forward was that China have been quite cautious, right, in its move, reflecting in the language and the key messages that are mainly framed in a couple of the tones. If you probably notice or observe the languages used in each dialogue and the meeting between China and the two countries. First, China can offer objective and fair good offices, right? I mean, like it's quite neutral and positive and constructive. And second, China support ASEAN's role as a main mechanism to solve the conflict. That tells us something, right? I mean, like China doesn't want to see as like a single player pushing harshly on ASEAN. So still, elevate ASEAN positions in its deals. And third, the tone that we can see is that China said that it is neutral and does not lean toward any side in the conflict. And during the conflict, you probably could see, some of the accusations from especially from some of Thailand type people during this time, right? That probably China was leaning toward Cambodia having the exercise earlier and probably supply some of the weapon to the Cambodian military to fight against the Thai military. So China stand firm that it's neutral and does not lean toward to anyone. So these careful moves like by China contrast to American very strong pressuring positions and posture, which is relatively forceful, right? With coercive bargaining power, especially using tariff as like a strategy to calm the conflict down. With the U.S. pressure, both agreed to sign the ceasefire agreement in July earlier. So Washington awarded, both country by lowering reciprocal tariff to 19% from 36%. So that's one of the rewards that Washington gave. The recent peace declaration, well, the Thai side normally would emphasize this word, right? It's not a peace accord. We already signed a ceasefire, and we normally insist of using declarations in KL during the ASEAN summit, was also pushing by Washington. And you can see, President Trump could in this peace deal, right? And last week, President Trump could probably take one of the success on his peace building portfolio, and perhaps for the next year's Nobel Peace Prize, nomination. So you probably could read from both signing ceremony in KL last time in July and last week, both in KL. The setting can tell something, right? The first peace ceasefire agreement, you saw China presence over there, but this time it's only Trump, right? Like as a center, as a the central stage in the KL Accord, if the Malaysian wants to use that word. So that elevated positions, of the U.S. leadership in this case. So in short, what we have learned from the development of the tensions and peace buildings are, China's roles still persistent, but prefer a careful gesture and not very decisive in that sense. So importantly, in my opinion, Beijing could have used economic and political power as much as the American did, right? But it is not a good option for Beijing at the current moment and current situations. Mostly Beijing still faces a trust deficit within ASEAN countries at large, despite having close cooperations for decades. Well, if you could trace back since the Cambodia conflict in the decades of 1980s, this kind of revealed clearly in Singapore-based ASIS Yusuf Ishak survey, right? That China's trust is actually lagging behind major external partner of ASEAN, whether it's the EU, the Japanese, or even the Americans. So China still have to be careful when playing this security role. So with this trust gap, it is hard for China to convert capabilities into decisive power and leadership in this case. So as a result, China's role has been overshadowed by Washington, who is still willing to use carrot and stick measures, in this case. So another reading that probably we could see toward the end of this episode of the peace process is that ASEAN centrality can be seen. It's not shining away, but in my opinion, ASEAN's role is still ad hoc, right? I mean, like it depends on ASEAN chair assertiveness and political will to play this role. So that probably leave us some room to discuss about ASEAN's role in the our discussion. So I still think that that arguments that I put forward a couple months ago still actually be seen in this last week peace process in ASEAN summit. And I think China still important key player in this peace building afterwards. But it's still still play kind of like the not very active, not very assertive role, I would say, in this peace process. But it would be like one of the key supporter of the peace building between Cambodia and Thailand in the future.
Thanks so much, Paul, for recapping your article for us. I would still encourage watchers, viewers to read Paul's entire commentary. But I'm particularly heartened by your optimism, as cautious as it is, for ASEAN's role in peace building in the region. We can talk more about that. But Paul, I want to turn to you to ask for your perspectives and what it's like from Phnom Penh in terms of where we are with the peace accord, peace declaration right now. How does Cambodia see the way forward?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me here, and also very nice to reunite with Ajahn Paul again. So from Phnom Penh, the peace accord, or whatever we call it, is declaration of Thai-Cambodia relation moving forward, KL Accords. It doesn't matter for Cambodia. The matter if we get the deal and the milestone that is the main objective of Phnom Penh since the start of the conflict. If you may trace back, this conflict actually new. It's a frozen conflict dating back decades, if not years, if you count the most recent conflict from 2008 to 2011. The attempt to internationalize the conflicts have been always the Phnom Penh main objective, because consider the bilateral capability head-to-head. Cambodia is way outmaneuvered by Thailand in terms of economic side, in terms of military capability. So as a smaller state, Cambodia most prefer measure would be to internationalize the conflicts, would be to get everybody involved, as you may see, just a few days after the clash on the May 28, Cambodia have been resolute to submit the case of the 4 area to the International Court of Justice, which is in a way that irritate Thailand a little bit from the start. That can be seen by some Thai actors. Major escalation from Cambodia, at least on legal side. Another major escalation would be the leak of the phone call, of course. But the presence of President Trump, presence of Prime Minister Anwar, and now we have the involvement of the ASEAN observer team to observe and to witness and record the withdrawal of destructive and heavy artillery from the border area, have been going into the expectation what Cambodia has been wanting all along of this resolution of the conflict, because they know that they have the law on our side from the Phnom Penh government, but you may also need to match that legal advantage with the military and the hard power, we call the sticks disadvantage vis-a-vis Thailand. So from the start of the conflict, the main objective is to get international community involved. I think it's the consistent approach for Cambodia in 2008 when they tried to get ASEAN involved, they tried to get the ICJ involved. So this time around, it's nothing different. But so if you note from 2008, 2011, it was the Cambodia out of the conflicts of its own. The civil war was just finished less than 10 years ago, if you count by 2008, and then you have the border tension with Thailand. So Cambodia post-Cold War, or the post-war period at the time, still believe in international system, still believe in there is a world order that protects its interest, that can be a multilateral mechanism to find resolution to any conflict. But it was the realization for Cambodia in 2008, 2011, that there was no world police. So if there is a major shift and takeaway from the previous conflict, is that Cambodia believe that there is no world police for sure. And secondly, Cambodia need to find the main backer. So we see a major shift to China from 2008, 2011, when all international mechanism, the ASEAN, the UNSC, could not produce any tangible result to provide a long-lasting, peaceful solution on the border with Thailand. So that's the Cambodian consistent approach. So if you look at the backdrop of the KL declarations, that's what Cambodian government have been wanting all along. So in Phnom Penh, it's regarded as a big win. You can see on the television, on mainstream media, pro-government media, all of the song, all of the message praising President Trump, so on and so forth. That's in addition to the fact that we have been nominating twice, if not once, President Trump to Nobel Peace Prize for this year and the next one. But also another takeaway for Phnom Penh also is that the conflict is clearly not a proxy conflict. There is one article by a major news network soon after the clash of the 24th of July took place that they framed the war not in a way that you have on the one hand a Chinese ironclad brand in clear reference to Cambodia and the US treaty ally on the other side. But you look at the realignment of both countries, also the both major power, it's not static. US is not firmly on Thailand side. China is not firmly on Cambodian side. They do not have interest in picking a side, Thailand or Cambodia in this conflict. So you just see a realignment and hedging, active hedging strategy being on both sides that you have seen one news report on the New York Times that during ahead of the major class 24 to 28 of July, there major shipment of arms and artillery to Cambodia from China. But also at the same time, there is a missing fact that after the conflicts, there's also been a major Air Force exercise between the Chinese Air Force, Chinese People Liberation Air Force, and the Royal Thai Air Force as well. So you look at the stain, you look at the activity and rhetoric from both countries. I don't see both either Washington or Beijing have any interest in picking a side. They want to be seen on both sides in both Thailand, Cambodia, but also at the same time, you can also see the fact that the final resolution now with the KL Accord being signed in Kuala Lumpur. I think we have mentioned already earlier about the absence of President Xi Jinping or Premier Li Qiang at the signing ceremony is also a major uh, slap as well to China, given this is the whatever we call the Chinese backyard or front yards, but it was the American who came in and negotiate. Even though, like Paul had mentioned, China had been working in its own way, both on the table and behind the closed door as well, to find a resolution with the mediation of effort by Foreign Minister Wang Yi, so on and so forth. So for Cambodia, the peace agreement is a major win. And I would like to conclude we managed to internationalize the conflict, at least regionalize the conflict, at least to get ASEAN observer team on the ground to record the facts, and also at the same time provide a major opportunity for the new government here to find a leeway out of its image of Chinese reliance status before the conflict, to announce that there is also an engagement with the US as well. So that's all from me. And look forward to our discussion here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul. I just want to encourage our YouTube viewers to post questions if you have any. Please note that you will need to sign into your Google account in order to pose a question, but we'll get to the audience Q&A in a short while. Meanwhile, I'm going to use my privilege as a moderator to have a conversation with both panelists. Let me start with Paul. So, Paul talked about this internationalization of the conflict from Cambodia's side. And from the Cambodian standpoint, it has every right to do this, given the historical backdrop that Paul very kindly laid out for us. What's noticeable from the four conditions is the absence of this refrain from internationalizing the conflict that is not in the KL Peace Accord. Was this, to your knowledge, a request at all from Bangkok? And how does this continued internationalization of the conflict hinder, if at all, the way forward between both Cambodia and Thailand with the peace negotiations?
I think in this issue of internationalizations of the issue of the conflict, if you notice from the beginning, right? I mean, like Thailand stands stick with the using bilateral mechanisms, and that remains a key strategies that Thailand wants to use. I think at least as I was mentioning that the pressure from both China and United States, especially United States, that kind of pushed Thailand away from that core positions in Thai foreign policy. Normally, if you notice all these like a border conflict or border issue with all the neighboring countries, Thailand always have this bilateral leaning toward the conflict resolutions. Of course, it gives the power to the militaries and security apparatus in the countries to be able to exercise its power. So that's the main thing, right? I mean, like at least as Cheng Paul was mentioning that peace accord signed in KL, I can see as a Cambodian success in certain point, in certain degrees, that it brings Thailand to the table and agree with all the third parties and the ASEAN role playing in this peace agreement. So in that sense, I think Thailand would have to adjust its own policy. But if you have seen all of the interview after the peace accord, Thai leadership, both in political and military side, still adamantly focus on the bilateral mechanisms that both has to agree to go on. And I think there were some of the border commissions and committees, took place after KL summit, right, in the past week, to proceed, what agree on the peace accords, and then that relies on the bilateral mechanisms that Thailand and Cambodia has. But then you could probably see the role of ASEAN observer team, right? I mean, that's one of the things that Thailand has to accept, but it's still, Thailand still insists of the, how should I say, insists of using or seeing Cambodia's political will, right, to comply with all the agreement as conditions to Thailand fully agree to follow up all the promises in the accord, especially the release of the military detained in Thailand, 18 official. So that's one of the observations that I have, that bilateral mechanism still core of Thailand's strategies at the moment.
Cambodia, rightly or wrongly, has always been seen as being in China's pocket. And we can quibble with this, but is it the case that with this KL Peace Accord overseen in large part, and certainly in a very overt manner by President Donald Trump, is that signaling that Cambodia is turning the course away from China and moving closer towards the US, or would that be reading too much into it?
I think it will be too early to say Cambodia is moving away from China. I think we are still close to China. There has been news report that even the first ceasefire agreement in KL on the 28th of July, it was Cambodia also insistent to get China at the table as well. So Cambodia still regard China as its most strategic an important partner. But also, if you look at the timeline, in the next few years, by in a few years, 3 or 4 years, President Trump term would be gone. But President Xi term in China, and also the rule of the Chinese Communist Party in China as a major global and regional power will always stay. And that's very instrumental, also very important for Cambodian regime security, for Cambodian also state legitimacy, given all the military, economic assistance and investment are very instrumental to Cambodian development, Cambodian economy, but also regime performance-based legitimacy as well. So that's always the important thing. But there have been always an attempt, I think, since 2020, even from the first Trump 0.0 term, that Cambodia have been trying to woo, to convince, to lobby the U.S. At least mainly for the domestic reason, at least to keep the U.S. close to that. There would be way less criticism on our democracy and human rights records. In the same way that they actually in the strategic calculation and objective is Cambodia trying to treat Cambodia democracy and human rights record much like they interact with the Vietnam and also less democratic country as well. So that always been an attempt, and also the energy, the chemistry is there from 2022 when President Biden was here in Phnom Penh to attend the ASEAN summit. I think it's the only ASEAN summit in Southeast Asia that he attended that during the whole 4-year term, and Cambodia took a pride in that. Even Prime Minister office official have been very, very enthusiastic and fond of President Trump. President Biden at the time taking selfies, so on and so forth, and the upward trajectory of U.S. Cambodia relation. after the 2017 incident, after the Ream naval base saga, is that you have to also give credit to the Biden administration as well, from the 2022 to the end of the administration. The effort and negotiation, a lot of meetings have been taking place to improve the relation. And now that they agree to resume the annual military exercise, the Angkor Sentinel, to increase Cambodian cadet and officer to the professional military education in the U.S., also lifting some sort of embargo for Cambodia to have access to some sort of U.S. Defense industry output as well. That's in addition to what I mentioned earlier as a major win for Cambodia, moving beyond the border, moving beyond the conflict, and you get the U.S. on its side, but still the China is still the most important for the people, elite here in Phnom Penh.
Paul, you mentioned the longevity or duration of the terms of both President Trump and President Xi, and you compared them. But of course, Prime Minister Hun Manet is also relatively new in office, and we can expect to see more of him in the coming years. And he, of course, is a product of a US military institution. So perhaps we'll watch this space to see whether Cambodia-US relations evolve even more under him. But Paul, I'd like to get your thoughts on whether you think this deal, the most recent one, and as well as the July ceasefire agreement, would have been possible between just Cambodia and Thailand, perhaps brokered by ASEAN, without the involvement of either the United States or China?
To be honest, I don't think it's possible. I think that's how I see both great powers' role in this conflict is possible. As we have discussed, and probably we have observed from the news in the past couple of months, this conflict has been larger than the previous one in 2011, and it created popular support on the nationalist front in both parties, in both Cambodia and of course in my own country's Thailand. And then I think that goes far beyond both countries to just come to the table and agree on the bilateral mechanisms to resolve the conflict, even though the Thailand still insists that Cambodia should comply to this mechanism. But you can see the push and pull of these kind of negotiations until Trump came in. Even Xi Jinping has been trying to talk to both leaders during these few months, but it didn't happen. Right. But then, so without ASEAN, we have to give the credit to Anwar, ASEAN chair, this time. Anwar has been very proactive in putting this kind of office, a space for both parties to come and talk. And of course, the role of the United States is one of the decisive factors, I think, that would shorten, the process of negotiations and everything to end this conflict. Yes.
It's really interesting because the conflict broke out again. Malaysia came under fire from other ASEAN commentators saying that the chair was not working fast enough to broker any negotiation between the two parties. And so setting that aside, Paul, do you agree with Paul's assessment that without the involvement of the United States, this process would probably have taken a lot longer, if at all?
My apology. I agree. At least on a nationalist front, if you allow this conflict to take place, they're gonna fight until the last man. Because the sentiment, the identity politics is there, the national pride is there. But ASEAN, especially, I think the whole webinar here we we have to give credit to Prime Minister Anwar for his efforts, because there have been formula for ceasefire since the first day, according to Cambodian record of the event. Is you have Prime Minister Anwar trying to reach out to Prime Minister Hun Manet of Cambodia, and then acting Prime Minister Phumtham Vijayachai on the first day of the conflict. But later on, it did come out. And the reason was obvious. As Prime Minister Anwar have good intention, have good mediating efforts, but he have no leverage on both parties. So you need an external power to come in and to push and use the sticks to force the two fighting party into the table. So at the same time, you also see the absence of the ASEAN secretariats, which should have been more active. But also it also tells us about its structural challenge as well, because in previous conflict you have the General Secretary Dr. Surin Pin.
Paul seems to have frozen, but I believe he was talking about Thai former Foreign Minister Surin Pitsuwan, who is also ASEAN Secretary General at one point.
Yeah, probably during the previous conflict in 2011 that, Secretary Surin Pitsuwan was like playing some role in cementing the relationship and bringing ASEAN Secretariat into play. Yeah, but this time probably is one of the difficult situations as well, because I think, to continue what Paul might have said, I guess his idea is that, because the nationalist sentiments in both countries are very high, right? I mean, like having ASEAN Secretary General as a Cambodian person, that one of the tricky part that ASEAN Secretary could play the role effectively. So continue, Paul. Paul came back.
Please carry on with what you were saying before you got frozen.
I think you say my last part. And now that Dr. Kagum Hun is the Secretary General, he will not be trusted by the Thai side.
Yeah.
Moving forward, there should be certain mechanism, at least within ASEAN Secretary. For example, if you have the Secretary General coming from the first direct conflicting party, he or she should recuse himself and leave the role of mediating effort to the Deputy Secretary General. So I think I'm frozen again.
You're still fine.
I am a little concerned about where this trajectory might take us in the future and what it means for what we always lament in terms of ASEAN unity and ASEAN centrality. If we rely on an external push in order to get disagreeing parties to come to the table, Paul, what do you think that means for ASEAN's effectiveness that is already constantly under fire?
That's the key point, right? I mean, like I just left that part in my introductions, that ASEAN's role is important, and then that's up to the ASEAN chair, to play the key role in pushing the conflicting party to come to talk. And that leaves us a question whether or not the following ASEAN chair, which is the Philippines, next year, will be willing to engage actively in, the issue related to mainland Southeast Asia. It's not only Thailand-Cambodia issue, right? I mean, like we still have another big issue and long-standing issue, which is Myanmar crisis. And as South China Sea disputes are a direct national interest to the Philippines, a lot of people that have had conversations in the past couple of months also questions this issue, whether or not the Philippines would see this mainland issue as a key issue that ASEAN chair should to pay more attention to as well, not secondary to South China Sea conflict, right? Like what I said, like Myanmar crisis even need, ASEAN unity and stronger positions and common positions, right, on the upcoming elections proposed by the junta in the upcoming month in December and the following months in next year. So what ASEAN should do with this issue that has been affecting a large number of people, civilians, the casualties along the borders or inside Myanmar that we have to address to. So that tells us something, that with ASEAN unity, ASEAN centralities, of course, has been revered by great power, but it actually does the unity, really play the role here, right? I mean, like in terms of like go on and solving the conflict by itself, and all the parties in as ASEAN member countries would have the ability and willingness, right, to use ASEAN as a platform before great power, intervene into the conflict.
For your take on this slightly disturbing trajectory of needing external influences in order to push peace negotiations between ASEAN member states?
Cannot hear the question well.
Oh, I was just asking for your take on what it means for ASEAN unity if we are constantly having to rely on external pushes in order to get our house in order.
That would be our problem. We would be in the problems that we already need external power to be in. So I think taking the lesson learned from this conflict, I'm not sure if stakeholders would ever learn the lesson from 2008, 2011 conflict we have before, to the Myanmar crisis, and now the renewed conflict between Cambodia and Thailand. I'm not sure stakeholders have learned the lesson and come up with concrete alternative solution, how to reform ASEAN, how to reform ASEAN as an institution, how to reform ASEAN as a secretariat to be more effective, to be more flexible, to be more efficient in negotiating, in providing a mechanism, a sustainable mechanism that any conflicting party can always go to and resolve conflict. But that go to my foundational question and notion as well. The fact that President Trump have been very, I would say, successful in pushing both sides to the table is because of the leverage he have. He used the right leverage at the right time. It was the tariff that was on everybody's mind before I think the end of July, when the so-called deadline will be forthcoming, would be forthcoming. So he just used the right leverage at the right times. That's something that different approach from China that I do agree with Ajahn Paul and you as well, that China also have their own certain leverage, but they have been using different approach on whether how those leverage can be used and pushed to get the results of the peaceful resolution. So it would be unfortunate for ASEAN to always having to rely on external power all the time.
We have a number of questions, but I just want to stick on this point, Paul and Paul, because if by your own admission, ASEAN itself and the ASEAN chair didn't really have any leverage between both Thailand and Cambodia, and there had to be this reliance, as terrible as implications are for international order, for Trump to use his tariff coercion policy to actually move the needle between both countries, Cambodia and Thailand. Wouldn't this be, in a perverse way, some sort of incentive for ASEAN to actually plot its way forward in managing conflicts more effectively? Because if the alternative is simply to rely on threats from the outside, then perhaps the better alternative is for ASEAN to look inwards and figure out what the points of leverage might be. Paul?
Um, it's very difficult questions, Elena. And we, as of academics and people in the think tank business, always talk about this issue, right? Whether or not ASEAN could be strengthened and be having its own agency to exercise its own power and dealing with its own issue internally. And I think ASEAN has the experience during the Cambodia conflict and even like before that, right? Like confrontation situations back in the 1960s. So that's the success. And that come about the one of the intramural norms that we keep reiterate, within ASEAN that non-interference principle is a key and a core in ASEAN. And then as long as we still stick with this non-interference principle strictly, I think ASEAN would not be able to do anything. I feel quite pessimistic about this. As long as we can adjust the norm, right, to leave some room for ASEAN as a body, as a group, to play roles in certain security and very destabilizing issue in the regions that we can, exercise ASEAN agencies in a more effective way within these, regions. But as long as anything happen and then, for example, like Myanmar issue, ASEAN, issue 5-part consensus for many years, and how many countries follow that 5-part consensus, even Thailand itself, right? I mean, like we resort to like the mini lateral arrangement, of course, is the Thailand fourth frontline state to deal with this Myanmar issue. But like ASEAN 5-part consensus is not the core of each countries to guide this foreign policy. It's like just the background that people has to observe, and if it doesn't fit its own interest, it just like discard or abandon. That kind of things, even like a simple things, right? Thai-Cambodia conflict as well, right? I mean, like as I was mentioning, Thailand still adhere to bilateral mechanisms to conflict, resolutions from the beginning until Anwar Ibrahim came, and he couldn't actually, if you really look into the series of negotiations, he couldn't really do anything much. Just like put them together, talk, and then they're gone. The fight started again until Trump used that coercive measure to push forward. So in that sense, non-interference principle, of course, it has a benefit, but at this 21st century, we need to come up with like more innovative way to using this this principle to make ASEAN more stronger.
Paul, do you agree?
I totally agree on Ajahn Paul's notion about the ASEAN and the fact that we need something to change as well in terms of the peaceful bar. So quite shortly, I would also to point out what can be ASEAN priority as well is the conflict prevention could also be very important. I don't have a good answer on how can we do that, but it should be the question that ASEAN should always ask themselves, so that we can come up with concrete proposal for the whole bloc to prevent the conflict from taking place from start in the first place. So it would be that as long as by the time you have the gunshot being fired, it's the all diplomacy, all the civility has gone. If we resort to use the gunfire.
Let me ask a provocative question that was posed by one of our viewers. What are the specific red lines for Bangkok and Phnom Penh? And what would China have to do to push Thailand closer to the US, and vice versa? What would the US have to do to push Cambodia even closer to China? Paul, would you like to take that on first?
The red line for Bangkok to be pushed to closer to China, I would say, if there is a strong evidence that Beijing support or supported even during the conflict, during the fight, during the battle, that Beijing supported the Cambodian army with weapon supply and everything. I think that would be the red line. So basically, go back to my main argument is that Thailand would revere bilateral mechanism and like the talk between the two parties without internal interference. That's the foundations. But because the situations has been developed to this point where great power happen to be interested in interfering, so we cannot do anything. But the red line is that if Bangkok found that Beijing support or even politically support Cambodia in this conflict, or take side in the future if this peace process has been implemented in the future, that would be the red line for pushing Thailand to be closer to the United States as a hedging strategy.
And Paul, red line for Cambodia?
I think it has something more to do with internal politics in Cambodia. So I think the Phnom Penh government have been very satisfied with the current approach by the current administration, but not stressing too much on democracy and human rights in the country, which was cited as one of major reasons that pushed Cambodia closer to China in the first place, especially by the end of Obama administration and the start of the Trump 1.0 first term. So that will be the red line for Cambodia. Other than that, the foreign policy remain intact, that they want to be friend anyone. But like I said in the start, China remain the most important one, given the instrument and the tool that they could provide to Cambodia to enhance the legitimacy in the country.
So, Elena, let me add a little example of what I just mentioned earlier. During the conflict, there were rumors among Thai, nationalist populations that after the joint exercise between China and Cambodia before the conflict erupted, right? Cambodia used China's weapons, right, left over or hand over from the Chinese military to Cambodia, and Cambodia used those weapons in these fightings. So that kind of flare up the sentiments against China as well. I mean, like even some sort of like a statement from the Chinese ambassador in Cambodia saying that when I read the statement, right, it was just like neutral to me. It's just like as an ambassador, he would have to probably say something very neutral, but like it was interpreted as China siding with Cambodia, and then that get a backlash in Thailand among like nationalist support. So that's what the red line I said that that would push Thailand closer to the United States in that kind of situation.
Thank you for that example. So I think moving forward, given all that you said, both of you, Paul and Paul, what do you think will be the most likely strategic posture for mainland Southeast Asia, for your country specifically? Will the sub-region be carved out into spheres of influence? And I think just to add to that, there's another question about the recent meeting between Presidents Trump and Xi. And given what seems to be, for now, a tentative détente in relations between the US and China, maybe some call it a tactical détente, what does that mean for the strategic posture for both Thailand and Cambodia? Maybe Paul, I'll start with you.
Yeah, of course. In Phnom Penh, the reading of the Trump-Xi summit in South Korea is just buying time. Yeah, it's some sort of a short term, if not short life truce, because both sides still need each other for now. So it kind of a de facto ceasefire of the trade deal and the trade war. The US still need the flow of the critical mineral out of China. China still also need the access to highly advanced chip from the US and the US company until they could build their own, and for the US until they could form their own alternative supply chains. So that the reading from Phnom Penh is just a short-term truth, if not short-life ceasefire of the trade war. So that for one thing. Second thing is the posture in mainland Southeast Asia. Phnom Penh would expect the escalation even more between the US and China in the years to come, given the involvement of China in Thailand, in Cambodia, in Laos, and in Vietnam, and same for the US, trying to reinforce their treaty alliance with Thailand, trying to recalibrate relation with Cambodia and reinforce their presence in Vietnam. So the posture, the intensity of the competition gonna be there. But one thing we have to also look ahead is whether the Trump 2.0 administration will also reinforce the Mekong US partnership that was elevated and renovated from the Trump 1.0 as well, because it would be directly challenging China supremacy and spheres of influence in the southern border.
Yes, I totally agree with Cheng Po as well. Like so on the positive note, if you really look into this, series of conflict management, both the United States and China weighted in this case to support ceasefire, reflecting a rare convergence of interest, right? I mean, like, especially in the situation where geopolitical competition is very kind of fierce. Obviously, neither side wanted a border war in mainland Southeast Asia. So this suggests that both U.S. and China share common interests. I mean, like even though it's like a temporarily, coming into Dayton, period after the APEC summit, but it shows that U.S. and China still have or share more room of interest and can work together, right, or in support to one another in the common area. So that's a positive note. But I share with Cheng Po that the caution side of this, geopolitical, competitions in this region is that the U.S. still, the U.S. pressure and Trump deal suggests, that U.S. want to be seen as a more important key player in the region, and in particular in this Thailand-Cambodia case. So this revealed that competitive nature of the current great power competition is still intact, right? And it's still continue. And like why U.S. Kind of renew interest in this mainland Southeast Asia. We have been criticizing the U.S. role in mainland Southeast Asia for quite some times, that it is secondary or like probably the fifth choice of the U.S. foreign policy. But this renewed engagement, has shown that the United States want to counter China's growing security footprint in the regions by using crisis diplomacy to re-engage both, Bangkok and Phnom Penh after years of uneven tide and at times, sanctions embargo on Cambodia since 2021 or even longer than that. So you probably could see more fierce competitions in the region, especially on other issues besides this, border conflict. You probably recall some of the transnational issues in the regions, scam center, or even critical mineral. That the U.S. signed agreement with Thailand, with Malaysia, and with other countries during this Asian trip. This time. So these are like some of the issue that we can probably observe in the future if the competitions, how the competition's gonna end up, and whether or not Southeast Asia would have to have its own strategy to cope with this, and how to balance or hedge against these great power competitions in the region.
I think it's a pleasant surprise that ASEAN received so much attention and positive attention from President Trump's visit and his attendance at the ASEAN summit. I'm not sure, though, that having crises in the region as a key point for diplomacy is the way forward, but I suppose we'll take what we have for now. Between us three, a Malaysian, a Thai, and a Cambodian. This is almost like a revival of the KL Peace Accord, except we're not signing anything today with this event. But I want to thank both my friends and colleagues, Paul Busbarat and Cheng Po On, for taking the time to go through the Thai-Cambodia conflict and the implications of great power competition in Southeast Asia in such a fluent and comprehensive manner. Thank you all for listening, and I hope we'll see you at the next Carnegie China event.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.